So my name is Jessica Castaneda. I know many of you, some of you, it may be your first time you've joined us. If this is the first time with IDRC, we are a consortium of 32 states. Many of you guys are consortium members, but one of the things we try to do is provide resources for all. And so a lot of the resources that we're going to be sharing, absolutely anybody can use. I came from the most underfunded state, one of the most underfunded states for many years in migrant ed, and one of my personal pet peeves where people would say, we have this great resource, and then it would be like, but it's $400, or you can't have access because you're not a member. And so it's been one of my joys to be able to work with this consortium and have so many people be able to share. And I think the challenge of recruitment is real. There's, finding the families that we're looking for takes a concerted effort, and the more tools we all have to share, I think the better off we are. So if someone can do me a favor, whenever I put the chat box on, I don't know if you see a black screen on there, if anybody sees that, or if it's clear, just let me know. Just want to make sure I'm not blocking that. So welcome everybody. I assume you're not seeing a black screen because I don't see. Okay, clear. Okay, thank you. Because then I can kind of watch the screen as we go. So this resource, IDRC, one of the things that I think makes us hopefully we're effective, is we have what we call our technical support teams. And these are members from our member states that are on different work groups, and we work to develop materials that would be helpful for everybody. And so usually the materials that we're creating are something that the work group, it was either part of our grant requirements or project requirements, or it was something they specifically requested. And so this tool that I'm going to share today is something that was kind of built out of need and out of states' request for more support on strategic planning. So what I'm going to share, you're going to want to go back to the, let me go ahead and just go to the Google Drive. And let me share what you're looking for when you get there. We have, let's see, these are all the stuff that's covered. If you look on here, there's something called the IDR state plan checklist. You're going to want to look at that. And we're going to be basing a lot of the training off that you're getting right now off of that checklist. So I'm going to close some of my slides, and I'm probably going to turn my video off because my computer does better without that. So going back to where I was. The purpose of these slides is really to help. The last session that we had was on balanced recruitment, but the purpose of this slide is to help people really know how to make a plan related to effective balanced recruitment. So it should be adaptable to any state's needs, and it includes sample best practices that are kind of right inside of there that can really be used for your plan. And so we believe that you can use it as a recruiter, as a regional coordinator, or as a state coordinator. And I think that it will be helpful for you. So the agenda today, we're basically going to look at what you have to do for your state plans, what you need to do to develop those plans, and really looking at how to assess your needs, how to understand the tasks that need to be done, how to evaluate what's really happening, develop goals, really look at those partnerships and determine timelines and kind of put it all together. So if you just went to the balanced recruitment one before this is really going to volley off of that, and you're going to hear kind of how you're looking at all those different pieces. If you didn't, we have a full training on balanced recruitment that we recorded and you can listen to, and we also have it on our website. So IDR plans are required. This is something required by OME to ensure and demonstrate alignment between the laws, regulations, and guidance, and the development and implementation of an effective balanced identification and recruitment plan. So you're kind of have to look at who's eligible, how do I do this, how do I look and make sure that our whole state is really being looked at, and how do we make a plan with our certain circumstance? Because every single state's going to look really different. Some of you have, in one particular region have 8 recruiters, and some of you are the only recruiter for your entire state. So we want to make sure that what we're sharing with you today is relevant to all of that. So it's important to check out the recommendations that exist in the National Recruiter Manual. This may be a underutilized tool sometimes. Maybe I'll just go to that and I'll drop it in the chat box. That way you can see it. Okay, some of you, I think sometimes there's resources in MEP that some of us know about and other people may not know about. So there is a National Identification and Recruitment Manual. And in the manual, there is part 1, the recruiter manual. In chapter 5, it talks about developing a state, local, and individual IDNR plan. And it'll give you the reasoning, it'll give you suggestions, what it should possibly have. And some of the things are like a calendar of seasonal crop activities, profiles of crops. And so I'm going to share with you some tools that we already have in IDRC that you can kind of hook into that'll help you do this. So there's some suggestions of, for example, an individual recruiter action plan should show what the recruiter will do, when they'll do it, how they'll do it, how you'll measure success. And so this is the tool that we have is kind of a checklist, a way that you can walk through some of these things, but we didn't just make this up as far as the need to have it. And so you can kind of see here in the, in that IDNR manual that OME has for recruiters that you can kind of check out and access that. Make sure I check the chat box and make sure you guys have any questions. Okay, so that's where that comes from. So what should your IDNR plan include? Your mission statement, your purpose, your measurable objectives, what activities and strategies you're actually going to use, what resources you have that are state specific, who's responsible for these different things, these timelines of when things are going to happen, and action plans of, who's actually going to be responsible for that. So another thing that you could be helpful is looking at your professional development plans, your recruitment plans, how they all go together, how quality control goes together, and how interstate and interstate coordination goes together. So I'm going to show you real quick. I'm going to exit out of this and show the tool, the checklist tool, and then I'm going to share what it looks like as far as an actual training related to it. So let me make sure that I'm sharing the right thing with you. And so this checklist tool is inside inside the link that I had of all the presentations. So when IDRC was IRRC about 4 years ago, they made just a simple checklist that was like, hey, your recruitment plan, does it have a mission statement? Is it included? Is it in progress? Is it not included? Your measurable objectives. So do you have measurable objectives about your professional development, about a balanced recruitment identification plan, about quality control activities, about coordination? And then does it have activities and strategies that let you look at what you're going to do with professional development, what you're going to do with balanced recruitment, what you're going to do with quality control and interstate? So this is what we used to have. And then we felt like, this is nice, but not that nice. So could we get a little bit more information? And so it would ask like professional development plan, what's your recruiter plan? So what we added to this was steps that you could actually use to create this plan. So there is a checklist here that it gives examples. So, this is assess the current state of identification recruitment efforts in the state. So I'm going to go to presentation files that'll walk us through this tool. And so this is about a 4 or 5 page document of the things that should be done in order to create your tool. But I'm going to use some slides to kind of walk you through it. So let me go back to that. So we will get where we need to go here with this. So like I said, you have that reference to go back to, and we will share that. And let me pay attention to anyone. It says, let's see, question, is there a sample one in that manual or somewhere else? I've been doing one for years, but like to see how it's done in another region. So we're going to go through a sample one that we've made as an example. Not a sample, but we'll give the example of, how to do it in this training. Okay, so going to the first steps. So if you're going to develop an IDNR plan, the very first thing you need to know is to actually take a realistic look of what's happening in your state. You want to assess the current state of identification recruitments in your state, region, or city. So this is important because you really can't make a plan to understand what unless you understand your strengths and current challenges also. So you want to clearly identify challenge areas of IDNR in the state. So like I said, we have that, that document that's going to tell you, you've got to identify challenge areas. So for example, when I was in Tennessee, our challenge area always was, we didn't have enough staff and enough funding. So we would have to say, what areas are we really not covering? What staff, where do we have staff? Are we maximizing where they're at? Do we have an empty position that we haven't filled and we really need to use that? So it says here, determine what areas of the state have not had thorough IDNR efforts conducted during the previous year. So how do you do that? You want to really figure out what's going well. This is important. You want to look, but give me an example. How could you figure out where in your state had been if you had this question, determine what areas of the state have not had thorough IDNR efforts conducted during the previous year, how would you do that? Give me a suggestion. You're responsible for your area, and your supervisor in some way is saying, hey, what areas were not covered? What reports or what resources would you use to be able to do that? Put any of your ideas in the chat box. Let's see what you're thinking. Hopefully you're there. So what do you think? How do you know what was covered well and what was not covered? What do you think? COE data, okay, recruiters' weekly logs. So yeah, you can take a look at your COE data. If you have no COEs, or you can show that no staff really have been in there, look at MIS 2000 to particular school districts and see if there are any families or OSY in them. So you're going to start seeing right now in these comments, there's got to be some data that you're gathering. So if your state doesn't have any data, it's going to be really hard to be able to know what was covered or what was not covered. So right now, your recruiter reports become really important. Your COE numbers will become really important. Your weekly logs that you have. So you're going to have to kind of look at what data that you currently have. You can see if you're missing students or if you have, but one of the things you're going to have to do is look at the data that you currently have and determine, all right, from the data that we have, where can we show that we've really been? Where can we show that we have not been? And so immediately data becomes really important to know. You're also going to want to know what's going really well. So you can do those same kind of things. Okay, it looks like the recruiters have really canvassed really well in this county. We've been there multiple times. We've followed up with all leads, but you're going to have to be looking at your data to kind of see what's going on there. So you're going to look at all those areas of balanced recruitment, which we just talked about in the last session. You're looking at, are we actually out in the housing and community? Are we actually working with our schools? How many of our schools actually are using some sort of survey to see about new families? Do we actually visit farms and agribusinesses? Who are our partners? Several years ago, we asked IDRC states to, when we were on the first round, to let us know who their farms that they work with periodically were, or what was their listing of those places that they had partnerships with. Some had huge lists, and some had maybe 10 farms for a really large state. So each one of us are in different situations, and probably in your state, there's different situations, but you've got to make sure, who are our partners? Where are we really visiting in housing? Where are we really visiting community? What are we doing? So reviewing those recruiter logs, looking at COE reports, mapping out areas where identified efforts have been happening, and then that should be able to help you see where things are not happening. So on the comments, it says we do a Google Sheet to recruit and keep track. So, kind of sharing where you've been, what you've done. Reviewing recruiters' reports and COE reports and mapping out areas can really be helpful and kind of see. So examples reports that you could use from your system. Comparing numbers of families and youth identified in an area in the past to current numbers, creating reports of old housing locations to determine if they should be visited again, viewing past qualifying activities to ensure those same industries are being worked with. Maybe you had several families coming picking pine straw in a particular area, and now you have nobody. What happened to those? You're kind of looking at specifically at crops, how they're changing and what's going on. So I think we just shared this in the last session, but I'll share this real quick if you haven't seen it yet. My computer sounds like it wants to be a rocket jet. It does this quite often, which is not good. Let me close a few things that might help. So one of the things you want to make sure that you really truly know how your staff, are they really comfortable? Are they working? Like I said, if you're with me in the last session, we did talk about this. And so I'm going to share just a little bit off of it. On our website, we have the Balanced Recruitment series, and on here, we have the Recruiter Strengths Assessment. So those of you that were with me in the last session, if you will put in the chat box what you think is your recruiter, your big areas of strengths that you know. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, I'll give a real quick brief overview of the strength assessment. So the strength assessment is designed for you to identify where are your strengths and where are your weaknesses for recruiters. And so it's not a gotcha thing. It's basically trying to figure out how comfortable they are in different areas, and then where do they spend their time. So as a state, you could, as part of your strategic planning, you could say, how much documentation do we have in the last year to show how much time we spend visiting farms or agribusiness? Can we actually show that our staff has really been visiting housing? Can we show, how much time do we spend with our current enrolled families? How many partners do we have? So you're kind of having recruiters are going to look at this time, and then they're going to rate how comfortable they are in different areas. How comfortable are they with farm, fishing, and agribusiness? Nationally, this is a weak area. This is many recruiters say, I do not know where to go. I do not know how to reach out. One thing that IDRC has been doing is trying to reach out to associations to reach out with the Beef Council and the feedlots and the vegetable associations. And many times when we work with states, they say, well, I don't know what to say to them. I don't know how to get in with them. I don't know what they do. So how do we determine how comfortable we are? And then if we're not comfortable, how do we make sure that we're able to boost efforts in that? So we have visiting housing locations, working with others in the community and school. So recruiters will kind of rate themselves in these different areas and how they are with planning and organizing their time. And then when they get done with it, they kind of make some goals of identifying like what are their strength areas and what are their weak areas. And many times you can pair one recruiter that will be really good. I can think of a recruiter that we had for years in Tennessee that you could really send him anywhere and in any community, and he could specifically really show up in any field. He was an older gentleman and he was super good at soccer. Actually, East Tennessee the soccer league was named after him. And we could show up and, he'd just see a bunch of guys and he'd say, Ben, muchachos, and just come on over, guys. And they would all come over. And I couldn't do that because it would have a total different connotation. But noticing that was his strength. He could go anywhere and do that. And another recruiter may say, I'm totally uncomfortable with that. Whereas that particular recruiter was not as comfortable in the schools. He would always say, hey, I don't know who to talk to. I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure where to go. And so as a supervisor, I could definitely support him on that, working with the schools and opening those doors for him. And so you want to know your staff and you want to know where they're at, but hopefully they're comfortable enough with you that they could say, I'm really not, housing makes me really uncomfortable. What should I do? And you can have these discussions to figure out how to support each other. So there was a comment, I love this assessment. Speaking to schools or school staff, visiting enrolled families and planning are my strengths. My goal is meeting with more employers for the upcoming year. So that may be, an area where it's like, hey, let me know what I need to do with these employers. Let me know the steps, and you may need to support your recruiters a little bit more. So the reason I bring this up is part of your role in trying to figure this, what your recruiters need is to, part of your assessment is to figure out how things are going, is to have them take that assessment and have candid conversations of where they need more support and where things need to go. So the assessment allows recruiters to do a self-check, be able to determine, and then they can ask for additional support. Or in some cases, they then will need to do research. Maybe there's nobody else that's there to be able to provide them additional support. They can at least kind of start searching. If agribusiness is my weak area, then what resources out there really help me to be able to get there? So if limited staff are available to provide support, IDRC member states can always ask for support from us on that, and we can support that also. So the strength assessment should be shared in a way to identify areas of weakness, but to build more support and capacity. And so you ask for help as you need that. So determine what areas of quality control are concerned. For example, sometimes IDRC will do re-interviews with states, and we find out that, wow, they had a re-interview rate of 15%, that error rate. This is something that's really of concern. So what is that state going to do to, first of all, do more re-interviews, figure out what the problems, why are there so many errors? And so sometimes it could be major problems. Sometimes it could just be that there's a lot of errors that your data staff are having to fix because the recruiters are maybe not spelling things right, or they're not, putting all the information that needs, or the comments are not needed there. You want to make sure that what are your strengths. So yes, our COEs are really good. We're doing the quality control, or I don't know that we've done quality control in the last year. We have new staff and we're not sure if we've checked. So you've got to look at and do a real, honest self-evaluation of how that's going. So once you know where your strengths, your weakness, you're determining where your efforts are happening, you're going to be able to use your data, review those different areas, and then figure out what's needed to kind of improve in the future. So data, determine what data is needed that is not currently being gathered to help with plans of how to gather data for the future. So then you look at weekly logs. One of the things that you want to make sure that's happening is that recruiters are doing daily or weekly logs. IDRC has a tool called Connect Team. You can make free reports that recruiters can fill out on an app on their phone, and you can keep that data. You don't have to use that, but you should have something that's really getting your recruiters to keep that daily report. One of the things that we also do, you can take a look at how many referrals you got. If you're using the referral tool that IDRC has, how many referrals? If you're not getting any referrals throughout the year, is it because you have a better way to use it than the tool that we have? Is it because people are forgetting like who they need to ask for referrals, or maybe they need training on referrals? How are you working with the schools? Do you have those surveys from your different schools? Are you following up? Some school districts, some EMP programs are getting surveys, but they may be waiting 4 months before they reach out to them to even handle them. Or they'll say, oh, we have so many surveys, we just don't have time to deal with them. You got to make sure that whatever you're getting, that you're able to use your time effectively and really look at how that's being used. So you want to look at, you're working with schools, determine how many surveys you've received, what the follow-up looks like, make sure that you have someone that you're working with in each school district, check on that full follow-up, see how that's working. Using the portal that we have, I know we've shared this multiple times today. We have an ag portal. I'm guilty of thinking everyone knows about all of these. On this ag portal, I'm going to drop it in the chat box. You can check it out. IDRC we spend a good amount of time on trying to create all of the reports that show you as many farms and resources as possible exist for every single state. I'm going to look for a state that's not one of our migrant ed states. Maryland, for example. Maryland is not an IDRC state, but if you look through, we've got all the information for them on who receives subsidies, on the farm labor contractors. You can't see anything that I'm doing, sorry for that. All the farm labor contractors, all the H2A, all the rural housing. So this is anyone that does ag rural housing in the state. The meat and poultry processors. Then we have everybody's associations. So Maryland's Poultry Association, the Cooperative Association. This is something we're really pushing for people to reach out to those associations that already work with farmers. So on your strategic planning, you want to take a look at that and say, hey, who are we working with? Of this huge list, who have we actually been to? And then use data from COEs to determine what farms eligible youth have been found in different places, what kind of crops, what kind of work that they're doing. So you want to review your partnerships. Who are all the agencies that you guys work with? If you have very few, then you want to make sure that you really look to develop that. You can go to findhelp.org, identify agencies that would be ideal to reach out for future partnerships. Then you want to look at your housing. Are you really, we talked in the last session about balanced recruitment, and this one, to really do the plan, you've got to do a thorough assessment of how much of our housing has been canvassed. Where are we? How frequently are we visiting this? How often are we finding people in these locations? And then making sure that we're documenting that and that we're really using those housing that we can. Used MEP data to assist your reports. Determine what reports need to be run. For example, do you have practices in place that looks at you to see right when families are getting ready to no longer be eligible for the program, that you reach out and see if they've made any changes or any updates? Do you need to do in this process a thorough data review of what are your needs to really assist? Are you using, I know some states that are new with data systems and they can't even make the reports that they need to make to compare numbers, like where were you last year at this time compared to this time, where you are right now. So you're looking at all these different things, and then you're kind of developing areas of need. So maybe in my state, I realized that, hey, we're really not canvassing housing in a lot of places because our staff is limited, and it seems like we're spending so much time on our surveys, but we get a lot of surveys maybe that are not yielding results. And so we got to figure out how to be more strategic with those and make sure that it's not going to every single student. It's only the brand new students. So you're going to look at all of those different things and try to figure out some specific goals that you want to make and activities that are doable within your current restraints that you have. So this idea of making effective goals, you want to train them on developing measurable goals. Review what have been past practices, what goals have been met. Review how goals are tracked and measured in the current protocols and how that should change for the future. Some of you may not have a single goal. Maybe like, I don't know, we just go out and recruit. So a goal could be, somebody just put in the chat just a little bit ago, I realize I need to work more with agribusiness. So a goal could be, we want to identify in the state our 3 or 4 largest agribusinesses here in the next month and a half and reach out to them and start developing a plan on how we can work with them. So you want to have some specific things that will help move the dial and making sure that you're finding more families. So when you're putting it together, you want to make sure that you look at those goals related to the strength assessment, identify weaknesses and growth areas, and create goals. Break down the goals by district, by region, by state. Recruiters should have daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly goals, things that they're specifically focused on. So often in IDR, it's like, hey, you're the new recruiter. Great job. Go find families. And there's not a lot more guidance that's provided. And it should be way more structured, way more focused. And those resources that are available should be shared. So we do have the Power BI that we mentioned this morning. This is huge. And if you have a question, if you go ahead and put it in the chat box, and I'll definitely pay attention to that. So the Power BI tool that we have helps you prioritize what areas in ag are most important for you to visit. So I hate to feel like I'm like telling you the same thing over and over, but I'm going to share, for example, really fast on the Power BI, a few thoughts we'll look at Montana's, for example. I think I just saw Angela's hand there. So just those of you that have gone to the last session, I'll try not to say exact same thing. One of the greatest challenges that migrant ed programs have is knowing what is happening in their different counties and how to prioritize those areas to figure out where they should send staff. So if I'm the state of Montana and I know they have maybe one recruiter, two recruiters maybe, that particular recruiter has the great challenge of trying to make sure that he can use his time super effectively. So this tool was created with the idea that you could then do that. So when I was in Tennessee, I was always stumbling in the very beginning of, oh, wow, this one has a lot of agriculture, or this one doesn't have anything. And so instead of just like randomly trying to pick, I could go and use the ag census information and figure out which counties had the highest probability of workers because they had the most ag. Now, one thing I want to say is sometimes I can give you a story using the ag census in Cumberland County, for example, in Tennessee, was a big area that had lots of work in beans, in snap beans and different types of beans. And when we got the ag census, we noticed that the county above it, I think it's Fentress, I could be just talking out my ear, but the county above it had a ton of ag, and we could never find any migrant families in that particular area. Well, it turns out that particular county did not have a lot of housing, and the way that it was set up, it was way easier for families to live in the county right below that. And so although the ag census showed us that there was a huge amount of ag there, the housing was actually in the next county over. But this tool gives you a guidance of seeing how it's ranked. And then the next page lets you see the number of farm workers compared to others. And I can change this and look at the difference of, how many numbers of farm workers are there. So this is just farm workers reported on the ag census. So there's 13 pages of it. This page lets you look at the operations and how many workers they have, the school districts. Then we start breaking it down into the actual type of work. So if I am, let's play a little game here. Some of you have listened to me multiple times today, and I don't want to make you crazy. Am I not sharing this? Oh, wow. I'm not sharing anything with you. Well, then okay. So thank you for that. So those of you that have been with me in the last couple sessions, what key things does this page tell you? Put it in the chat box. If I am a Montana recruiter, where is my fifth largest county in agriculture in the state? Can anybody put that? And let me drop this. I tell you what, I'll drop this particular link in the chat box, so it might be easier for you to see it from there. Okay, so Martha gets the award, and Tanya and Marty Lou, Lindsay. So Fergus is number 5 in ag sales. All right, so does this state have more crops that they sell or more livestock? Which one? Put it in the chat box. Crops or livestock? Let's see if I see. Crops, very good. Okay, so moving on. So this particular slide, I want you to tell me how many operations hire between 5 and 9 workers. See who gets the answer correct first. So you guys are getting good. 14. Okay, so in this, let's switch counties. Let's look at a different one. Granite. How many operations hire 2 or more workers in Granite County? See how fast you guys are. Okay, 2 or more workers. Okay, it says here, 2 places hire 10 plus workers. So we've got 2 right there. Now you might not have been able to see it good because it's got, now the majority of sales in this particular county are what? What sort sales by type? We've got livestock. So I can look at any of these and see the difference. Now I have 6 that hire between 5 or 9. So you can kind of see. Next page, what does it tell us? How many beef cows are there? Could you please share how to switch the counties? I press and it does not. You got to change up here in the top. You just change. It's over here. So in this particular county, in Glacier County, they have 35,000 things. Well, it should, as long as you, I mean, you should be able to change it there. You might have to use it differently. So they have 35,000 cows, 928 milk cows. Next page, you can see poultry. Over here, it tells us the number of operations, number of honeybees. So there's a lot of things on here. It lets us know how many vegetables and let me see if I look at a different county. Jefferson, it says, wow, this is a lot of asparagus in this particular one. Hill County, you can see the different areas. If you see 999, I told the last group, this just means there's 1 or 2 producers. They may have tons, they may have a little, but it's limited producers. And so Ag Census keeps it anonymous. So this particular Hill County, they've got some acres, but it's going to be, it says here, there is 1 operation that has between 5 and 24 acres, and they sell a lot of different things. So then the next thing we look at is orchard and berries. This is not a big orchard and berries area. So you can see this particular area has strawberries, and you can kind of change and be able to look at them. So I'm switching a whole bunch of them. Normally I don't switch that like crazy. Let me go back to my very first page to see what was our top county. So I don't even know how to say that. I'm going to do Sheridan because I'm going to probably mess up. We'll look at Sheridan County. Let's see. Sheridan. I may need to, so some of you are saying you can't get the statewide summary. It won't let us choose a county. The statewide summary won't let you, that's the front page. The second page, third page, fourth page is when you can change the, go in there and see. So you can then see the berries, then you can see field crops. For example, field crops in Stillwater, they have 26,000 acres of wheat. That may or may not bring any workers in. A lot of these hay, there's 46,000 acres of hay that could bring some in. And over here, it looks at how many operations. There are 26 operations with over 1,000. So you can kind of break this down. So I won't spend a ton of time. We do have a training specifically on the Power BI tool that's on our YouTube page. We have a lot of them. There's a question. It says, do you have suggestions for clear goals that could be included that are not related to or submitted or, okay, hold on. Do you have suggestions for clear goals that could be included that are not related to submitted or completed COEs? Do you aim for visits, outreach, connections? Okay, so we'll talk about that. So first thing I want you to think about is you've got to understand your areas and what's going on. And let me go back to my slides. So the Power BI will let you be able to see that. So now we're going to talk about putting it all together. So one of those things is you have to really look at those crops that are happening in your different areas. So clear goals can also be looking at where things are happening at what time and how staff are working and focusing on, really conducting outreach and prioritizing in those areas. So if I see that I have dairy and then I also have field crops, I'm going to probably hit my dairy more towards the times that field crops are not going on as much if I have limited staff. And so I also want to know what agencies are working, in that particular area that could provide resources or referrals that we should be working with. So when we're putting it all together, you're going to have to look at that ag data. Then you're going to have to make sure that your staff really know what crops and activities are in their specific areas. And so IDRC does have crop timelines for our member states. I'm trying to remember if we did this for everybody. I think we started out with just our member states because this is a time-consuming project. So for example, let's take a look at Wisconsin's for Kyle's question. And hopefully I'm sharing this. No, I'm not. That's not helpful to you again. So there is the timelines. So one of the things that we wanted to do is you've got to know when things are happening in your state. So I'm going to open Wisconsin's and see if I can make sure I share the slide so that you can all see it. Now, this listing that you see is everything on the ag census that it said that Wisconsin has. So if there's any almonds, it's going to happen between harvesting, sorting, packing, loading. All of this is going to be between August and October. If they have apples, all of this is going to happen between July and October. If they have aquatic plants, it's going to be between June, July, and August. If they have aronia berries, it's all going to happen right there in August. If they have apricots, so each state can go through and look at when these things are happening. So in a specific area, if a recruiter has, green beans that they're working with, they can know that July, August, September, I need to make sure that I'm really looking at this and I'm working with that. So these timelines can kind of help in that process where you can kind of know, what's going on in your different areas. So you're going to check out that. You're going to kind of start looking at when those different things are happening. Then you're going to put it together and develop lists and priorities. So this morning we shared about the possible number of farm workers in an area and the tool that we have for that you can actually look at and see how many workers. And so you're going to say, okay, if part of our goals, if we have not done any work in this northern part of the state, we need to make sure we're making goals of looking at when would be the most ideal time to be there, what's happening, and how can we use our time to do that. And so Power BI can really help you with that. Determine what agriculture associations are related to the key industries in the state. So part of your goals could be trying to reach out to the Wisconsin Dairy Association and get a key contact with there and figure out how you can work with them. You want to develop a plan to reach out to those associations to determine how you best can work with them and how that can trickle down to be able to actually find workers in the field. So once you get these things together, I know several of you last year that went to the Recruiter Invitational, we actually had them think about everything that they have to do during a year and put it all on index cards. And then they had to write those activities down and then include all of it. It's re-verifications for kids in the fall, assisting maybe with summer school sign-up, summer programming, visiting farms, building relationships with ag business, following up with schools. So you kind of time it out and say, all right, when school starts, we're going to have to do some registrations and support that. Or this is when there's some community health fairs. So we want to make sure that this is happening. And you put it by month, everything that should be happening in January, February, March, April, March, and you kind of plan out. And then there's some things that could go anywhere. And you might need to put those on the slower times. So maybe outreach to communities that, families, find out when families are going to be, if they've made any other moves. You're trying to calendar everything out for your state there. Then you make a plan. When should you do professional development? When should recruiters attend school meetings and introduce the program? When should IDR be done? How will partnership development be done? But when should that happen? Would it be better to reach out to Migrant Head Start, for example, in the fall? Or would it be better to do it in the spring? And then you have your reasons why, and you're kind of putting it all out. And so your goals are going to be related to all of these things that need to have happening. So your plan should be what's happening with farms, fisheries, and agribusinesses. When does these different activities need to happen? What are we doing to build those partnerships? What are the crops? When are those things happening? How can we get leads from the community? So you've really got this, all of these different cards and these different maps, and then your months, and then you're going to kind of put that all together and figure out when it should be happen. You're going to differentiate those activities by this has to be done in the busy season, or this could be done in the slow season. And then you make a plan to show what could be done by position. Okay, this is a recruiter responsibility. This is a recruiter on the south side, or this is a recruiter on the north side, or this is a coordinator. So maybe you need to reach out to those 5 largest agribusiness, and that's the state leadership that's going to reach out to do that. And then that's going to trickle down once that gets started and be assigned to regional coordinators or local coordinators or recruiters. So you want to create measurable goals to help recruiters and staff stay focused and organize and conduct needed activities. So notice that the goals say to help them stay focused, help them be organized, and help them conduct the needed activities. So how can they accomplish those priority areas? Now, you may say, this is way, way more than we can do. All right, well, what would be your key absolutes that you have to do? And once they're finished, what would be the next tier of priorities of things that have to be done? So then you're going to put it into action. You're going to really discuss how they can make those plans, have them make a sample daily plan for one chosen month, or a weekly plan. So you have everything in December and it looks like you've got everything lined out. What would the plan look like? Where would they spend their time? So coordinators and supervisors, you should have regular check-in meetings with staff to see how things are going. And you should have measurable goals and attainable goals, again, related to those things that need to be accomplished and need to be done. And so those are, let me go back and share with you the tool itself that I originally mentioned. Let's see if I can share out of there. Got too many things open. Let's see if I can find it. So I want to open this plan up again, this document, because these slides were related to this. So this was a document that was created. So here's some steps to creating a strategic, effective, balanced recruitment plan. So it says this document has been created to assist. It is adaptable. It includes sample best practices to aid in the creation of the plan. So when you're trying to assess what's going on, you're identifying your challenge areas, you're identifying what's going well, you're determining what areas of balanced recruitment you're not doing, and what's actually happening. You're having your recruiters, you're aware of their strengths and their weakness areas. You're determining what areas of quality control are really a concern. And then you're looking at what's actually happening, what's going well. And then you're looking at your data. You're reviewing the referrals. You're looking at how you're working with schools. You're looking at how you're working with agribusiness and farms. You're looking at that partnerships. You're looking at the housing, and then you look at any other data. And so at this point, you're like, okay, I kind of see where we are, but let's look on these goals. So you're training your staff on what those goals are. You're reviewing your current practices. So you're looking down and you're breaking it down and looking at how that could actually work. You're looking at your ag that's going to actually happen. And then you're looking at everything else that needs to happen during the year. And then you put it out by month and you figure out and you prioritize and you make goals included by that. So it's kind of sounds complicated, but when you think you can't make a plan without knowing what's going on, whether things are actually happening or not. So that's key first. Then you're looking at, what you need to do next, the data, what it's showing, if you're getting enough information. Then you're looking at all the ag that's happening and all of those activities. So it's kind of an interesting process. And it's going to be very tailored to each specific state. And it's going to look very different. Like I can think of one particular state that we work with that there's one person who's responsible for most everything on there. And so, of course, she's going to have to, it's a she's going to have to go through and figure out, what is doable and workable within her area. And so that's where we talk about the flexibility of this is ideally you can do all of these steps. But if there's only one or two, or you don't have funding to canvass your whole state, where are you going to find the largest probability of finding workers and canvass those first to help bring, find those in an efficient manner? So there's a lot of strategic planning that needs to happen, but this is just kind of straightforward reasons and ways that you can go back and say, yes, we do have measurable objectives related to professional development. We do have measurable objectives related to, the balanced recruitment. We do have it related to quality control. And then we do have specific activities and strategies that are related to this. And we are able to say, these are the resources, these are the people, and this is who's going to be able to do this. So where is this form found actually? So the form right now is found in your, in the presentation files. We have it for everybody, and I will be adding it today because I realized I forgot that. If you go to the website right now and you go, let me make sure I'm sharing this. I am not, I keep doing that. If you go to our website and you look under recruiter resources, where did I put this? Oh, it's right here. Strategic planning checklist. So it's under training resources for recruiters. And we have the slides right there. And then we have the checklist right here. So I will put that in the chat box. So I did put that in there. So that's where that's from. So that was a quick overview of the strategic planning resource. And like I said, the checklist, the training's right here. The ag timelines are over here. Ag industry profiles are over here. So if there's an industry you're really not sure what all is entailed, or I think we showed this to the last group. These are all the different industries that you can kind of walk through and see. For example, let me show you one real quick with, I think of silage and hay. So most of us probably feel pretty comfortable understanding that, what hay is. This one gives a little bit more information about, understanding hay production, the different types of terms, the different things that happens, whether it's mechanized or not, the different activities that are related to it. What's silage? If you see these little things that look like marshmallows in the field, what's exactly happening? So silage is pasture grass that has been pickled. It's a method used to preserve the pasture for cows and sheep to eat later when the natural pasture isn't good. And so then it goes on and talks a little bit about silage, how it's used, how it's made, the fermentation process, why they have to keep the oxygen out, what's the difference between silage and hay, and tips for recruiters on, there's a lot of H2A orders that specifically are for forage operations, and they'll mention and talk about what they're going to do. And then tips for recruiters on how to actually work with them, interstate custom harvesting, for example, and then national associations that you can reach out to learn more. So if you are working on your plan and you're like, I really don't know anything about this industry, this might be a good place that you can go and learn some of the basics about some of those industries. So I'm going to turn off I'm going to stop recording.